Can you hear me now? I'm sorry, I'm just talking to you all. And can you hear me now? I had my earphones in. Here, here we go. Okay. So uh, with that, let me just start over. My name is Michelle Gardner-Ince, and I'm so happy to be with you this evening. I'm so glad. Thank you, whoever that was that told me that you could not hear what I was saying. Can you hear me now? Testing, testing. Can you hear me now? Okay. Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Shanita. What's up, girl? Thank you so much for giving me that feedback. You and whoever the other LinkedIn attendee was. I'm Michelle Gardner-Ince, and I was saying um, that I have all of my adult life been serving military members and their families, right? So that means, whether it's been through child care centers, daycare centers, gyms, or fitness centers, restaurants, hotels, etc. And and I just wanted to come on today and talk to you because, I'm excited that women veterans are being elevated and celebrated. As someone who's never been without a military ID card, meaning I'm a military brat, a military spouse, and a military veteran as well, I'm just, been really blessed by the military, right? The whole integration of the military. For those of you who don't know, June 12th was the year that the president at that time decided that there would no longer be separate services. There would be no longer a women's Air Force or WAF, a women's in the Navy WAVES, and women in the Army Corps WACs, that they would be integrated along with our male brothers in service. And not only that, but what that did was it also made their similar service and sacrifice equal to their pay, right? So they began to earn the same pay as men based on their rank, not based on their gender. And what I love about the military, having been around this environment, is that although it's not perfect, it has set the tone for how women in society have been treated. And what year was this made? 1948. I believe it was President Truman. Don't quote me on that. I can pull up the history. But if you got other questions or you want to share your experiences, please let me know. Put it in the chat. Introduce yourself in the chat. Let's get a little service rivalry going here. How many of you, if you served, say U.S. Army, U.S. Air Force, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, Navy, put it in the chat because we're going to get started talking about how the military service and being integrated into the military service and celebrating women veterans has really been a benchmark for society. Basically, from whether it was pay. All right, U.S. Air Force, I don't see your name. I just see LinkedIn user. So if you can put your name, I apologize. Some people, depending if I'm not connected to you, it won't show me your name. So put your name and your military service. Thank you. And basically, when you think about it, and I can just speak from my experience, you know, I don't know that a civilian or a corporation would have given me the opportunity. I see you, Miss Christine. Thank you for your service. That the corporate entity would have given, I call it this little black girl from Georgia, the opportunity to run a $1.2 billion operation that had more than 87 locations and stores, and I had 7,000 people working for me, and they gave me that opportunity, and I don't know that I would have gotten that same opportunity, and I'm so thankful for that one. And that's one of the things that I think is not really as visible, is that women veterans have been in charge of large programs, large amounts of people. And if the people and the programs haven't been large, the diversity and the complexity of those programs have been large, right? Which means that, the state in which we are now, we have basically come a long way, but we have still a very, very, long way to go. And so, from service to empowerment is really kind of our theme tonight. I see you, 𝓮𝓸𝓼𝓼, U.S. Air Force. Thank you. Also, Lori Calkins, U.S. Air Force. All right, Air Force is showing up now. I see you. And we got Lori. And then Christine, thank you so much for joining. You may have to leave, 𝓭𝓨𝓸. Oh, hey, 𝓭𝓨𝓸. I know 𝓭𝓨𝓸 supported me in supporting the veterans when I was the director of CVE. Great to see you, lady. Thank you for joining. So I would like to ask a couple of questions, right? And I put those in the description. What are some ways that we can better help women veterans transition? And the reason I love entrepreneurship is because although it's tough, it is only limited, right, by your hard work, your resilience, and it is not limited by a position description or a paycheck. And so that's the reason why I love entrepreneurship. And then as well as, when we go into employment, women veterans are underserved, not just in the medical arena and other benefits arena, which I know, the Department of Veteran Affairs is working hard at, but also they're undercompensated, right? They're undervalued many times. And so, what we have an opportunity to do here is to not only talk about where we have been, but where are we going? And so tell me if anybody has a question or a statement they want to put out there. Go ahead and put it in the chat. Something that specifically talks about women veterans from the standpoint of not only what we have, the progress, because we've come a long way. Of course, there was a time when women weren't allowed in combat, but we now are in combat now, and so we have a choice. But what I'm passionate about is I really want to hear your story. Please put it in the chat if you've got a question, or just a testimony, and I'll put it on the screen. Now, one thing I do want to ask you to do is, many of you know my 9 to 5 is I work for the Department of Veteran Affairs, Office of Small Business. All views and opinions expressed here are my own, do not reflect that of the Department of Veteran Affairs. I ask that if you have, issues with the Department of Veteran Affairs in whatever area, your benefits or whatever, please let me know. You can send me a chat. I'll try to get you connected with the Center for Women Veterans, and they are charged with, making sure that the needs of women veterans are taken care of. There's also the Veteran Crisis Line. if that's required. But really, I want to focus on more of the positive of how can we elevate and celebrate each other. And if you got ideas, please put those in the chat. So the first question is where we're talking about, let me get to it here. Any comments? Any comments or questions? So first one, what actions can we take to ensure that women veterans receive equal opportunities and support in their post-military careers? So what do you think we can do to gain more equal opportunities and support in their military careers? Now, I want to say it's tough for anybody to transition, but I believe oftentimes it is tougher for women. And you might say, why? I believe it is because women network and build relationships differently. When we build relationships, we're talking about our children, our significant other, our pets, yoga, working out, the latest purse, shoe, Real Housewives of name the city, Atlanta, Seattle, wherever. But when we talk with each other, women to women, we're not necessarily working on talking to them about opportunities. Hey, what are you doing on your job? Are there any new opportunities for me? As I begin to transition, we're not talking about, are there business opportunities? And the question is why? Why do you think that is? Can somebody put that in the chat? Why are we not talking and building relationships, male or female, that could possibly lead to more equal opportunities and support in our post-military careers? What are some of the things we can do to ensure, and this is, some of us, it's not a system, what can we do to gain more opportunities and support in our post-military career? Can somebody put a comment in the chat or have a thought on that? Anyone? Let me go back to the comments here. All right. Gendria, Lori, Shanita, let's see who else is here. Dr. Gwendolyn, any thoughts on that? As I said, I think a lot of it is we look at relationships in a different way, right? So, we have to begin to look at opportunities, and those opportunities could be, first of all, networking, right? And the biggest thing about networking is it's about relationship. It's not transactional, it's relational, right? And so when I say that, what I mean is be the woman or the man in the room that mentions someone else's name when there's opportunity present that would be a perfect match or a potential match with them. And the reason I say that is because we can't be in all rooms, but if we begin to build relationships, someone said, I'm on my phone, unable to see and do much. No worries. I'm on my phone and I'm in my car too. No worries. Thank you so much. thank you for joining. I want to thank everyone who's on for joining, or anybody who will watch later. Uh, so, uh, so when we're talking about how do we find opportunities, right? Um, I think that a lot of it has to do with, like I said, networking. The other piece is, do we even realize the skills we have, right? I believe that one of the challenges I know even that I have is, and I had, was understanding that sometimes we just do what we do, right? We don't really think of it as um, um, anything special, but it really is special. Thank you, Christine, for putting resources in the chat. Anybody else that has resources, it says this organization was awesome and helped with my transition. Is that the Women Veterans SJ Network? I'm not familiar with them, but if a fellow sister in service says that it's a good resource, I think it's a great resource. I don't know if you know, but there's also now Department of Labor and VA and DoD have transition assistance programs and education sessions that are specifically focused on women veterans. And mainly because, if you don't know, women veterans have a tendency to not take advantage of benefits at the same percentage as our male counterparts. Also, Christina. Oh, thank you, Christine. I'm sorry, Christine. You're saying the Women Veterans Social Justice Network out of Atlanta. Thank you, Bridget. Oh, I love Bridget McCoy. She's amazing. Yes. There's also Women Veterans Interactive, right? I think Ginger moved to Atlanta, if I remember correctly. But Women Veteran Interactive, Ginger Miller. There's Melissa Washington, who has the Women Veterans Alliance, which is another great transitional aspect. Let me tell you something. The states that are leading, in their efforts to help specifically women veterans, California, and it really ties to the largest populations of women veterans: California, Virginia, Texas, Florida, Maryland, Virginia, New York. Those are the ones that really are doing specific efforts. So when we're thinking about, the whole transition, I do want to say the relationships are important because there's a lot of benefits and a lot of programs both at the state and the federal level that sometimes you don't find out about until you actually are talking to someone. I believe mentoring. And also the thing I would caution with mentoring is, there's a lot of people, a lot of organizations, a lot of coaches out there that, will say that you need to pay. There are a lot of free opportunities in resources that are out there, either at the state, federal. You've got Department of Labor, you've got Small Business Administration, you've got the VA, you've got your veteran service organizations like American Legion, DAV, Purple Heart, Vietnam Veterans of America, all have transition programs. And I know specifically DAV, just because I'm a life member, has some programs specifically for women veterans. Oh, and don't forget Women Veterans Rock. Women Veterans Rock is another great, a great aspect of transition. So we've kind of talked about, the some of the reasons, the challenges, why, why we don't have equal opportunities, how we can get more equal opportunities, and support for a post-military career. And then let me say the second one, transition to the second one, because we talked about how relationships are important, how mentioning other people's name for opportunities, but people can only mention your name if they know what you do. And so that's why it's important to tell people, I'm interested in this. I'm thinking about this. Oh, there's a tip I do want to tell you. Informational interviews. I can't stress how powerful information interviews are. Just reaching out to people and saying, hey, can I talk to you about what you're doing? I'd like to better understand what you're doing, how your transition was, or even if they weren't in the military and they didn't transition. I admire your career, and I'd love to know, more about what you would do if you were me at at this period in your career. Now, I do want to say you have to do your homework, research them, know everything you can about them, so that you're not asking things that you could have researched on the internet. And then, the other thing is then follow up, right? If you get their time, say thank you, send a thank you note, ask them if there's anybody else that they would recommend you talk to, and just explore, opportunities, and know that this transition thing is a transition. It's not, I'm being told to deploy here and now I'm deploying. If you're just joining, I'm Michelle Gardner-Ince, U.S. Air Force retired veteran. Happy Women Veterans Day. We're kind of talking about 3 questions. One deals with about transitioning to a post-military career. How can we receive equal opportunities and support? And I think a lot of that resides with us, but there's also several resources available, and Christine put some in the chat. The second one is, I want to say, on this day, honoring women veterans, let's acknowledge that there are unique challenges that we face during our service, right? How can we create a more inclusive and supportive environment that empowers women veterans to thrive? How do we create a more inclusive and supportive environment? What do you think? And I think awareness is huge. What do you all think? One word, if you can put in the chat, put one word in the chat that speaks to what you would like to see to create a more inclusive and supportive environment for women veterans. One word. Well, my word is respect and awareness. Awareness that all women veterans aren't the same. We may be women veterans, but we may be woman veteran a minority. We may be woman veteran LGBTQ. We may be a woman veteran officer, a woman veteran enlisted. We may be woman veteran who retired. We may be a woman veteran who only spent 4 years in. There could be a woman veteran who has been experienced military sexual trauma. There might be a woman veteran who's been disabled or a service disabled. Then there might be a woman veteran who's combat disabled. My point is, I see, absolutely, genuine. I think is a very good word. But we are different, and I think the awareness is that we're different and we're complex, but we are strong and resilient. And so genuine, what do you mean by genuine? If you were to think genuine, is that go along with authenticity too? That people would be more genuine, meaning no agendas. If you can type more genuine, just be genuine. I got you. Just be genuine. Got you. Hey, say that says it all. Compassion. I think compassion is important. So many times, I think that's a strength that we bring to the fight is compassion as women veteran leaders. But the question is, do we get that back? And I think we have to be compassionate with ourselves. I remember it's a long time before I gave grace to myself, right? I mean, I one of the examples um, that I think of is, um, when I was a commander in Ellsworth Air Force Base, South Dakota, was when my daughter was born. My husband and I had a couple of miscarriages, and we were, we're trying, and we arrive at a cold weather location, and oh, by the way, I'm pregnant. We're pregnant within 3 months. Um, but when my daughter was born, I had 400 people working for me. And for the first year or so, I would say I really was stressing out because I wanted to be a great mother. I wanted to do all the things my mother did, right? And yet I had the responsibility that my mother never would have had, right? My mother's never, she's a retired special ed teacher. She's never had 400 people work for her. She's never had 10 people work for her, right? She's an amazing woman. But the responsibility and the stress of all that, and then to add to the fact that I was senior, so I'd been in almost 15 years by the time Brianna was born. And so many of the men had not even seen a woman leader be pregnant. And so I didn't want to disappoint. When I had morning sickness, I would be trying to, come in and act like nothing had happened. But the reality was I had to give myself grace. And part of that grace was, I had to give compassion, be compassionate to myself with the same compassion I would give other people. So genuine, compassionate. Who else? Anyone else got a word, one word that you would say would be what we can do? How can we create a more inclusive and supportive environment that empowers women veterans to thrive in their civilian lives? Acknowledgement. Acknowledgement. I agree. Acknowledgement. Acknowledge that we've served. And how many of you would you put a yes in a Y or in the uh, um, in the chat if you are a woman veteran who feels like you're invisible, that you don't people don't see you. And if you say yes, and you can type, then say why. Because that always perplexed me. And I think it perplexed me because I didn't understand how you could serve and not see that your service was important. And I believe that's because I'd always had a military ID card. That was the only life I've known. So I couldn't really relate to women saying, I'm invisible. People don't recognize me. I don't believe that I served just because, I only did 2 years. I only did 4 years. No, service is service. Sacrifice is sacrifice. There's some sacrifice more or differently, but it is still a sacrifice for this great nation we call America. Who else? Shakita says acknowledgement. So I believe acknowledgement, Shanita, I'm sorry. Acknowledgement is important, and I think it means see me, accept me, value me, right? What else? And I see you, Shanita, you say you want to be more like your mom. I know that's right. We all do. And when we look back at what they've done, and you just imagine, how did they do it all? And this is the grace I'm talking about. The reality is they didn't do all that we're doing. They did a lot, but they didn't do all that we are doing now with job and work and technology, and not having the opportunity to turn off, right? So we've talked about so far, you know, how can we, what actions can we take to ensure women veterans receive equal opportunities and support for their post-military career? We've talked about some resources. If you know of any resources, even if you watch this later, please put them in the chat, share them with the community. And then now we're talking about how can we create an inclusive and supportive environment. That's so important, because, you know, many times supportive has to do with, I may have care, daycare or family care issues with an elderly parent, or a spouse, or even children, and not having a supportive environment where you're not made to feel guilty about doing those things, right? Feeling being supported that you may have a disability, may not be a visible disability, but you need to go to the doctor, right? And or you may need to see a medical, professional or mental health professional. Having a supportive environment so that you can feel empowered. And then the last question, the third question I had is, we bring invaluable, this is where I'm really passionate, so, I'll try not to get on my soapbox. Women veterans bring invaluable skills and experiences to the table. How can we better recognize and leverage their talents in sectors beyond the military, such as entrepreneurship, leadership, and innovation or technology? What do you all think? How can we better leverage the talents in various sectors, and these are underutilized sectors, right? Underrepresented sectors. How can we better recognize and leverage their talents beyond the military, such as entrepreneurship, leadership, innovation, and technology? And, the reality is, when you're talking about entrepreneurship, and most of you know, hashtag VetBizLady, follow that if you're not already, that I'm passionate about entrepreneurship. And I spoke earlier about the fact I'm passionate about entrepreneurship because it allows a woman veteran, or even a few good men who may not be a woman or a veteran, the opportunity to define what success looks like. To define what success looks like, right? And the reason I say that is because when you're an entrepreneur, yes, you need money, but once we put money aside, okay, but today with the internet, with e-commerce, there's so many opportunities to get into entrepreneurship. But the reality is, if you want to be a $200,000 company, a $2 million company, a $200 million company, a $2 billion company, or a $200 billion company, the only person that's limiting you is yourself. The resources are there, the opportunities are there, and in today's market, you can go find and create opportunities. And people say, well, how do you do that? You do that, one, by seeing who needs your gift, talents, what you have to bring to the table. And, there's a list on the SBA website. It's called the Women-Owned Small Business Underutilized NAICS codes. Well, NAICS codes is NAICS. Those are the codes that determine what kind of work that you do that's tied to what the VA or the government departments buy, right? So the reason that's important is it's basically saying there's not a lot of women represented in these areas. And wouldn't you know it, it's construction, it's IT, right? It is pharmaceuticals. It is also staffing, medical staffing, like for nurses and things like that. Logistics. The male-dominated arenas is where women have the most opportunity. So while there's more women in the military going into STEM and some of these male-dominated arenas, when they transition, they're not going into those areas for entrepreneurship. And so, entrepreneurship is a great opportunity, and I want to introduce and make women more aware that it's never too late to start a business. Even if you've retired from the military, been in the military, didn't retire, but went to a corporate job, you can always transition into entrepreneurship. And so there's great opportunity there for you to bring your skills. And so you might say, well, I don't know how. Well, a couple of things, right? And I call it my Uncle Sam method, meaning Uncle Sam is you have gifts, talents, skills that you learned when you were in the military. They were in your rucksack, right? And then you get out. Those skills, talents, the training does not go away. And I think that's the thing. And so many times we do those things so naturally, right? That we don't see them as special. But the Uncle Sam method says, I'm taking those skills and talents I learned, leadership, resilience, resourcefulness, critical thinking, planning, execution, all those things, so critical. We understand frameworks. We understand processes and systems. We take those things out of our rucksack and they equal solutions. S stands for solve a problem. A stands for address a need. M stands for meet a need. Address an issue, meet a need. Solve a problem, S. Address an issue, A. Meet a need, M. So it's the Uncle Sam method. And if you think about everybody who has made a lot of money, been successful, has solved some problem, addressed some issue, and met a need. And the thing to do, whether you're going and transitioning into a job or transitioning into entrepreneurship or even, even to a leadership role, is how can I take what I've learned and solve and what I do best, right? Don't try to do everything. Nobody knows what Steve Jobs was bad at. Nobody knows what Bill Gates was bad at. What we know is what they were good at. And so they basically brought a solution. They addressed issues and they met needs. And so, that's how we can leverage our talents. And the other way we can leverage our talents is, all those things that frustrate you, all the things that make you mad, that you're like, they don't know what they're talking about. They need to do X, Y, and Z, right? They need to, I was talking to someone earlier tonight, and we were talking about the hub zone, right? The hub zone is a designation that small businesses get when they live or establish their business in a historically underutilized zone. Those hub zones, business zone, I'm sorry, hub zone. So those zones are generally in rural or inner city locations, meaning there's not a lot of business there. They want to invigorate the economy. And so the requirement is that you have an office there and that you employ a certain amount of percentages in that arena. Well, all you have to do is, if that is an issue, how do we solve it? We solve it by looking at where are the people that we could possibly use that either have that skill in that area, or we could train to meet the skills that the government needs in that area. The second thing is, I used an example last week about COVID. Okay, when COVID vaccinations came out, there's the challenge of first storing the vaccines. Oh, we need cold storage. That was an opportunity. Somebody who's into cold storage or wants to get into cold storage could solve that, right? The other issue was, how do we transport them once we manufacture these vaccines? How do we get them from point A to point B? That's not only logistics and supply and demand, supplier logistics but it is also transportation, right? Cold storage in the transportation arena. Then when you talk about issuing those vaccines to the various dispensaries, whether it's doctors or drugstores, that's a whole nother. So there was an opportunity because there were so many needs that had not previously been met. And so that's what I mean by solve a problem. The problem was, we have vaccines. We need to store them. We need to distribute them. We need to transport them. We addressed the issue. They needed to be maintained at a certain temperature, get there by a certain time, and then meet the need. Meet the need is all about executing it. And so I believe that many times as women veterans, we don't realize we have the skill. We have the skill to be the solution. And then to realize, while we all have a heart to serve as women veterans, the reality is our leadership, our ability to innovate, our ability to get things done has a value on it. And if there's nothing else you remember about what I say, is the biggest challenge is understanding what your value is in the market. And the only way you can do that is to understand the market, because the better you understand the market, the better you can leverage your skills and your talents beyond your time in the military. So I've been talking for probably about 50 minutes, maybe 45. Do you have questions? Any questions? Any thoughts, comments? Well, I want to thank you, Facebook. I want to thank you, LinkedIn. I want to thank you, YouTube and Twitter, for tuning in. I truly believe that women veterans are this nation's national treasure, an untapped resource, and a top secret weapon. And think about it. Many women join the military for education. They join the military for travel. and the integration of the military, bringing them into an integrated military, really set the tone for women in leadership. It allowed men to see women in leadership. It allowed women to understand how to lead men. It also allowed us to achieve equal pay and equal opportunity. Thank you so much for coming. Hey, and Enrique, good to see you. I'm still waiting on you. I'm on your waiting list, buddy. Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Shanita, all of you for joining. But the reality is, women veterans join for education. They join for opportunity, and many of them didn't realize the impact that serving was going to have on their lives, right? If you think about it, if you had raised your hand and knew that when you joined the military, there's a possibility that you would have a higher rate of not being married or having a broken relationship, meaning formally with a divorce or not, that your ability to have children might be challenged or be a struggle because of things you've been exposed to, right? Because of the things that the stresses on your body, right? The rucksack that weighed heavy on your 5-foot body, it might not have been there. If you had known that you might possibly be abused or traumatized, would you have volunteered? But you did, and you stayed, and you were strong, and you were an inspiration to many of your sisters who may not have made it if it had not been for you. I want to say thank you for your service. Truly, thank you for serving. Let me just put it that way. And serving at with a sacrifice. Our nation is better because we have women veterans, not just tied to military security, but also tied to this nation that we showed America what integration and what women in leadership looks like. My hope is that we will see, this is my dream. I always tell people, I've got a dream. I'm a dreamer. I hope I'm not the only one. That's a line from John Lennon's song. But I want to just say that I have a dream that there will be 3,000 women who will become millionaires, not contract rich and money poor, but millionaires through government contracting, through some program, some opportunity that I introduced them to, because SBA and American Express a study basically said less than 4% of women own businesses will ever, in the lifetime of their business, generate more than $1 million. So I have a personal mission that 3,000 women that I have touched, given advice to in any way, would reach $1 million. Second thing, that there would be a $10 billion, yes, billion-dollar contract opportunity that is made up of an all-female women veterans team. Second of all, that we would see more women veterans represented on these corporate boards that influence corporate America, and that we would see more women veterans in the C-suite, because God knows we can do it. My name is Michelle Gardner-Ince. I want to thank you for joining this evening, this pop-up LinkedIn Live in celebration of Women Veterans Day. I want to say, may God bless you indeed. May He enlarge your territory. May He increase your influence. May He increase your wealth. May He keep you from evil, and may He keep evil from you, because it's ugly out there. but most of all, may God bless you, and I hope to see you soon. I'll be here Wednesday, 7 o'clock p.m., talking about demystifying government contracting. Thank you so much. We've got a great guest speaker. Bless you and good night, and continue to celebrate women veteran entrepreneurs, this nation's top secret weapon and a national treasure. Good night.